Hello and welcome to a Resource Review ICT special. If music be the food of love, play on a computer. Yes, that's right. Today we're looking at 3 music resources for secondary creative arts. They are a sound manipulation package, downloadable composition software, and a virtual sound studio. Recommending today's resources is David Ashworth, a freelance music education consultant who advises Bector and the DFES on how to embed ICT in the music curriculum. Also on the panel is Ian Patterson, Head of Performing Arts at Cannons High School, and Alan Mills from the Specialist Schools and Academies Trust. And on the keyboard, the computer keyboard that is our resident ICT expert Matthew Tosh, who will be giving us his insight into the resources. Well, David, without further ado, tell us about your first choice of resource.
First one I brought along today is called Ableton Live. I think the important word there is live, because for the first time we've got a bit of software that's specifically designed for live performance, which means that we can do so much more with it in the curriculum.
And is that the key thing that sets this resource apart for you?
I think so, yes.
So tell me a little bit more about what the resource does.
Basically, the sounds you can upload into the program whatever sounds you want, and they sit within little cells within almost like a matrix format, and you can trigger and call up any of those sounds in any combination instantaneously, and you can process them in real time.
Okay, well thank you very much. Let's now go over to our test lab and see what Matthew thinks of this resource.
Ableton Live uses a loop-based performance approach, which means the program can actually track the order of samples you play them and play them back in real time. So you can actually improvise sequences as you go along. Looking at the screen, we've got our main editing area in the middle with the columns representing the tracks and the samples you can see there. If I want to add a sample, then I do it from my library on the left-hand side. Drag across, and I've inserted my new sample. To play the sample, I just click on the play button on the left-hand side of it. And if I want to play all the samples right the way across the tracks, I just click on the play button on the master track. Now the really clever bit is when you want to record. You just click on the record button at the top, and in the same way that I've just been playing my samples, the programmer will now actually make a note of them. And now if I play it back, you'll hear those samples in exactly the same order. Well, you get the idea, that's working quite nicely. But you can also add audio effects, change all the levels, master your composition in exactly the same way. So when you play it back, you'll hear precisely what you created, including any mistakes. But don't worry, there is a handy undo function from the edit menu. And there's a really good help box in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. And that completes my express tour of the Ableton Live software.
Well, David, a very catchy demonstration there by Matthew, giving us a feel for this package. How well does it fit in with the national curriculum?
I think once you realise the potential of this programme, it maps across a lot of the music curriculum. It's not just a techno DJ application, although that's obviously where it sits most readily, I suppose. But you can use it across a whole breadth of music resources.
And what age group do you think you would use it best with?
You could start using it at Key Stage 3 quite comfortably, and then just go on from there till the grave.
Right, fantastic. Well, Ian, you've actually trialled Ableton Live with pupils. What's been the response?
Magnificent, really. We used it last year in its version 4 to produce a DJ CD after school with a group of boys, working with professional DJs as well. And that was a really very worthwhile application. But I agree with David that it's a much deeper program, and the other resources there and with the new facilities on the program, it makes it a very serious music production program, warranting really study right through to university level without a doubt.
Great. Well, Alan, positive points here. What about you?
Well, positive again. It is dense. I mean, coming to it, looking at it, it is very dense. The thing that I have to ask is what makes it unique. We talk about the live. I mean, you set a music student onto the internet to look for programs that can support what they're doing, and they find 1,000. And very often they use them and you don't see them till much later. So what is it about this particular program which is so special?
I think the fact that it's not working in a linear way. I mean, most of the software we see out there is really emulating the multi-track tape recorder. You move from left to right through time. This one doesn't. You're triggering your sounds from a matrix, so you're adding another dimension, if you like.
Let's now move on to David's second choice of resource. David, tell us about this one.
The second one I brought along is Acid Express. It's again a loop-based sampling program, allowing you to combine sounds in different ways to create a performance in a very contemporary style.
Why do you like it?
Well, I like the fact it's free.
Yeah, I think teachers are probably like that too.
Two reasons I like it being free. One is it's a stripped-down version of the full product, which I think is a good thing because it means the student is not going to get too distracted with lots of extra features and plugins and add-ons. So fairly quickly they've got to come face-to-face with actually using it to make some music. And it actually requires quite a lot more creativity to get interesting piece of music out of a stripped-down piece of software. The other very important thing, I think, is because it is free, there's a good chance the student will download it onto his home computer, and so you're making those links between what happens in school and what happens in home. If you're dealing with a piece of software that costs a few £100s, you're not going to get that seamless facility.
No, okay, well, thank you. Let's go back to the test lab and see how Matthew got on with this resource.
The Sony Acid Express window is divided into two main areas. You have an editing area at the top and an Explorer window at the bottom. Now, if you're familiar with Windows Explorer, then it works very much like this. When you find a sample that you want to include in your composition, you simply click and drag it onto the editing area and a track is made for you. Now, to specify where and when you want your music to play, you just click and drag the pointer across like so. And it's as if you're painting in your music. And to get rid of it, if you don't like it, you use the eraser function. It works in exactly the same way. There, I've got rid of my sample. Now, you can have up to 10 audio tracks with this version of the software. And because you can only have one sample per audio track, it does limit you to using 10 samples. Sometimes limitation can be a good thing though. To play your composition, you use the controls down here. And they work just like a CD player. To the left of these, you've got a tempo control, key control, and you can even change the time signature of your composition. When you want to export, you go to the Render As function, and you can have a choice. You can export as MP3, but because this is a freeware version of the software, you can only export a maximum of 20 times from installation. You can also make Windows audio files and also real audio files, and these are done at a reduced bitrate, which means when you play them back you get a very slight but nevertheless noticeable reduction in sound quality. There is a really good Show Me How function that takes you through. It's a tutorial and I found this really useful for getting to grips with the software. One thing I will say though is that as you do use the software, pop-ups crop up telling you to buy the full version of the software. But hey, I'm willing to put up with that whilst I work on my next chart-topping hit.
Well, David, an exciting resource for a free one, as Matthew showed us, but it's not new, is it? It's been around for a little while. Is there anything out there that has eclipsed it?
Well, as you say, it's not new, but I think it'll be new to schools. There aren't that many schools that I know of that are using Acid Express.
OK, well, let's turn to Ian now. How have you found working with Acid Express?
It is very simple, and I think it's as an introduction to a much larger program, by the way. The professional Acid Pro, as it's called, is a substantial program. This is a window into that, and as such it's a very sound beginning. It does allow you to teach some serious things in the curriculum. For example, if you see the structures up there, it'd be very easy to teach the logical flow of an arrangement or a popular song by putting in sections of the introduction and jumbling it all up, having them structure this in a logical way.
And how did the pupils respond? What did they think of it?
Students actually love this type of loop-based working in patterns. You know, it's a good thing because music is about patterns. Whether you're studying jazz or whether you're studying Bach or Beethoven, it's all about patterns.
Right. God, there's a lot to get out of this free resource, I think. Alan, what are your thoughts?
I think it's great. I think the best thing about it is the fact that it liberates the child, and the child is the one who's using it at home. It's available. So many programs available in schools aren't available to the child at home unless they've got enough money and a strong enough computer to run it. This appears to run on a reasonably, not terribly robust computer. It runs. It certainly offers a lot of creative activity, and I think that's the important thing about it. It's a resource for the student, not so much for teaching. So I think it's a fantastic free resource.
Great. Well, just a final question for David. Would you buy the full version, having used this free version? Do you think that's what teachers will want to go and do?
I'm sure they will. And there are stepping stones. You can go from this free version to like a mid-price version, Acid Studio,
Right.
and then if you want to go the whole hog
Build
into
up.
the industry, you go to Acid Pro.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Now, David, moving on then to your third choice of resource. Now, I described this in the introduction as a virtual sound studio, but it boils down to a couple of books and a CD. What is this resource?
If you look at the screen, you'll see it's wonderful. You've got rivets, you've got bolts, you've got knobs and dials. If you flick it on the back, you'll see cables and jack sockets. You just really want to stroke it. It's marvellous.
So that comes off this
Yes,
CD,
yes.
presumably. And it's called Teaching Music with Reason. Is this a teaching resource or for the pupils to actually get their hands on?
It's both, and the reason I brought this along is because I think that the teaching pack that accompanies it is so good, and I think is an exemplar of what a teaching pack should be like to support a piece of music software in the curriculum. Because so many of the handbooks and manuals that go with software are written from a technical point of
Right,
view.
okay.
This one has been put together by an orchestral musician, and the exercises and steps she takes you through in the student's book and the teacher's book are musical exercises. So you're doing musical exercises all the way through, and you're learning about the technology on the way. So I think it's wonderful.
Okay, well worth it. Well, let's see briefly what the panel think. Ian.
Yes, again, it is a marvellous tool. 25 years ago when I was teaching, we had tape recorders set up with loops on them and a 16-channel mixer. And this actually creates all of these things, and a synthesizer, and it does all of what we used to do with the cabling on the back for you to actually plug it in. In a way, I've found some students found that a little difficult because they've grown up in a digital world of matrix. But on the other hand, it does teach them the rational flow.
Okay, we haven't got much time,
Yep.
but Alan, what are your thoughts?
I think it's great because the way in which students now can access music through technology, they don't have to be fantastic performers, they can create their own composition. I think it's wonderful the way technology is used to actually explain the basis of that. Yeah, agreed, analogue, not digital, but you're using the digital approach to create a real experience of the history of music. And the history of music to most students nowadays is not the history of music that was taught in music lessons, it's the history of music as proposed by this particular piece of software. It's tremendous.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that's all we've got time for today. Some great discussion. But to recap, the three resources that we looked at were Ableton Live software package from Ableton AG, Acid Express 5 download from Sony, and Teaching Music with Reason CDs from Propellerhead Software. For information on the resources featured in the programme, go to our website, teachers.tv/resource review, or email us, resourcereview@teachers.tv. Big thank you to our panel, to David, to Ian and to Alan. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Resource Review. Bye-bye.